The Tennessee Titans are trudging through what you might call the suck at the moment, and that means changes are being made. They're 0-3 after a brutal start marked by inefficiency, incompetence, and three strong opponents that have amplified every little mistake. The performance from players has been poor. The performance from coaches has been poor. The reception from fans at home, with ownership and team executives physically being in the verbal line of fire, has been poor. It's been a big, big fat mess. And before even a month of the season has passed, the decision has been made this week for play calling on offense to change hands. Head coach Brian Callahan announced on Tuesday that he's handing over play calling duties to quarterbacks coach Bo Hardigree, who last called plays on an interim basis a couple of years ago for the Las Vegas Raiders. The pressure for something to change with Callahan and his feel for the flow of the game, game management, those levels of performance that he's not been able to reach a satisfactory level on so far. It's all at, well, kind of a boiling point. And this is a first big step to trying to bring that temperature back down. But how did we get here so quickly? And what will this actually change about a bad Titans team? If you're part of the Tennessee faithful, you know just how many years the Titans have shaved off your life with the emotional roller coaster of sports. Or maybe the roller coaster of life is messing with your happiness or preventing you from achieving your goals. The new year is a blank space for you to write a new story. BetterHelp makes it easier to get started. They are our incredible sponsor for this video. Regardless, if you have a clinical mental health issue like depression or anxiety, or if you're just a human going through a hard time, therapy can give you the tools you need to approach your life in a very different way. That's where our sponsor, BetterHelp, comes into play. BetterHelp's mission is to make therapy more affordable and more accessible. And this is an important mission because finding a therapist can be really hard, especially when you're limited to the options in your area. Easily switch therapists anytime at no extra cost if it's not the right fit. BetterHelp's platform makes finding a therapist easier because it's online and remote. BetterHelp can match you to a professional therapist in as little as a few days. Plus, with our link, you get 10% off your first month. Start fresh any day of the year with BetterHelp. Click the link in the description or go to betterhelp.com/ATOZ sports and get 10% off your first month of therapy with BetterHelp. As football fans, it's always easier to blame the coaching first and the players second. Whether it's conscious or subconscious, pointing blame at the coaches is always going to be the primary inclination more often than not. That's because it's a much easier pill to swallow that your coaching staff stinks. They're relatively easy to replace, but accepting that your roster stinks, that's a tough dose of medicine. Fixing a bad roster takes a lot more time, resources, and luck. So especially when a top draft pick quarterback comes to town, the heat is going to be on anything and everything else before the fans put that on the player. Coaching typically comes first. We've seen it recently to different extents in Chicago, New England, Houston, and Denver, just to name a few. That's not to say that these coaches are always blameless martyrs in these situations, but it is the natural order of things to hate coaching first and players second. That's why it's incumbent on coaches to do everything in their power not to make the story any more about them than it needs to be. I wrote this detailed piece on Callahan's job security that you can read in the description below, laying out a well-sourced understanding in the preseason of what Titans leadership wanted to happen. Namely, what they wanted above all else was patience. They knew it would be hard, but they were committed to it. And as I wrote then, the only thing Callahan could do to unseat himself early this season would be demonstrating incompetence as a manager. And regardless of exactly how fair all of the narrative has been so far, that's more or less what's happened. In week one, there were two fiascos, the end of half sequence and the inbounds rule that went unchallenged. Both had stories behind them that never saw the light of day, but Callahan did what he felt a good head coach does and absorbed all the heat on those things. He wasn't blameless in either situation, but he's also gotten too familiar this season with falling on swords. In week two, some felt he mishandled the end of half sequence there as well. And I personally think that's pretty ridiculous, but it's a narrative reality for a contingent of fans anyways. And in week three, he once again became the subject of discussion with an end of half sequence that was completely flubbed. To my knowledge, there's not much of a story here. They just screwed it up big time. Now, there is a little element of the referees and getting the K ball in versus the quarterback ball. I wrote a whole thing about that on AtoZsports.com. There's also a video that's either out already or going to be out here on AtoZ Sports YouTube talking about how special teams coordinator John Bones Fossil doesn't understand why the refs wouldn't let them get the K ball in instead of the quarterback ball, which led to the delay of game. That's neither here nor there. The point is they took two timeouts, couldn't decide, and then messed up the ball operation. Can't happen. Can't not make a decision with 2 timeouts in that spot. They screwed it up. It was, in my opinion, Callahan's worst moment of game management ever as a head coach. That might be a little strong, but I can't think of a worse one. It's just plain inexcusable. So in 2 of 3 games, he's been the story. That's not sustainable if he hopes to survive this season. And what's equally infuriating and confusing is how this wasn't the case in 2024. Have things just gotten tight amongst the coaching ranks? Has it been a series of merely unfortunate circumstances they've run into too early in the season? It's hard to say. But what isn't hard to say is that the consensus opinion from fans right now is this: he's in over his head. And eventually, narrative becomes reality, whether it's based in truth or not. That's why my ears perked up when on Monday, we asked him about the possibility of handing off play calling, and he didn't completely shut the door on it. He said, quote, "Yeah, everything's under evaluation right now at 0-3. Certainly it's all part of it. There's a player in their role. There's everything to that. I mean, we got to find a way to put ourselves in positions to win games. So we're evaluating everything," end quote. When further pressed on this and whether he's specifically considering handing over the play calling, he said, quote, "I mean, there's nothing more to add to it than that," end quote. That is not the same message or tone he's answered that same question with in the past. This has been brought up more than once during his tenure as the Titans head coach, and each time he more or less shut it down. It was dismissed out of hand. But on Monday, after week 3, he sounded different. And on Tuesday, the next day, he jumped up to the podium before the regularly scheduled coordinator press conferences to announce he'd be making a change. He said, quote, "So I said yesterday, a lot of things under evaluation and a lot of things that you self-reflect on with the start that we've had so far and things we've got to get better at. One of the things I think is going to help our football team, help me be a better head coach for our team, is I'm going to hand over the play calling to Bo Hardegree. And part of that process is, part of the decision-making in that process is that Bo has had some interim experience calling games. He's been with a rookie quarterback before. That part of it will make it a little bit seamless in that regard. And the other part of it is that our offensive staff and our game planning process and system is going to remain in place. It's still a collaborative process. We rely on everybody to do their part. Nick Holtz, the offensive coordinator, is still the offensive coordinator. He'll still maintain his same exact routine and process that he's gone through to help me. And then Bo is going to step in as the play caller on Sunday to allow me to do a little bit more with our team and with all 3 phases, pay more time and attention to those things, and get less in the weeds of getting ready to game plan." One of the things I told the team and told the players after our game is that, look, everybody owns a mirror. We can all look at it. We can all see where we need to be better and what can help us be better. And I think this is one of the best things for us at the moment to help me do a better job as a head coach and be more present and available for the football team and less involved in just the day-to-day minutia of getting ready to call a game. I think it's going to be positive for us, end quote. The biggest question now becomes, whose decision was it? Is Callahan handing this off by choice? Would he do so to genuinely help clear his plate for better overall team management? Is he doing it as an act of self-preservation to shake things up and buy some more time? Or is he being forced to hand it off? Is this a requirement from Mike Borgonzi, Chad Brinker, and or Amy Adams-Strunk? Could they have met and asked him to do it? This is all merely speculation on my part. Now, I know what I think is that he was forced to do it. I don't know for sure, but the tea leaves told everyone pretty much at the beginning of the week this might be happening. And I polled my followers on Twitter. I asked whether or not this would make you more or less optimistic. It was clearly something that a big chunk of people are interested in seeing happen. It was a sample of around 800 people when the poll ended, and roughly 350 of them said they'd be encouraged to see play calling handed off to somebody else. Some of that is surely driven by a general dissatisfaction with Callahan's feel for the game as a play caller. Others merely want him to have less on his plate to improve his management ability. And others still probably just want to see something change. We're all guilty from time to time of the nasty fan brain habit of wanting heads to roll without actually having a clear plan for what comes next. I kind of just fundamentally disagree with this idea of hiring an offensive play caller as a head coach to reap the benefits of having an offensive play caller head coach and then take it away from him to turn him into a CEO-style game manager. The whole point of having him as your head coach is to maintain continuity at play caller and with your offensive system. So are you really going to keep him around beyond this year if he's no longer calling plays? Maybe that's all this boils down to. He won't be around for long. Maybe that's the point. So there's no point in keeping him at the helm of the offense on Sundays. If that's where you're at, or more importantly, if that's where Callahan's bosses are already at, then I can at least see the steps that were taken to get to a play caller change. But if the general argument is that it can't hurt, my rebuttal is I don't see how it helps a ton. The Titans are more than welcome to prove me wrong, but even if Hardigree turns into this stud play caller, I don't know how that turns a bad roster into a not bad roster in a hurry. Time and development are still the only lights at the end of this tunnel. For now, the Titans seem to be trying to capture the coaching change bump that we see in the NFL without actually firing the coach. We'll see if that impact is felt at all in the battle of 0-3 teams with Houston this weekend. I just am not sure what the long-term plan is here. Maybe that's because there isn't much of a long-term plan for Brian Callahan's staff. We'll see how it goes with Bo Hardigree and with Callahan having less on his plate. There certainly aren't any excuses now. Looking forward to seeing if it helps, but really this team just needs development. For A to Z Sports, I'm Easton Freeze.